I think we're ready. My clock says 6:05. And so again, we'll start with some interpretation instructions. I believe Erwin and Abraham will lead us through that part.
Thank you, Jorge. Good evening to everyone. My name is Erwin, and my co-interpreter's name is Abraham, and we'll be interpreting tonight's session from English to Spanish. The following message will be broadcasted in both English and then in Spanish. First of all, we'd like to thank the organizers of today's events for their commitment to language justice. Language justice includes being able to speak, understand, and be understood in the language in which we feel most comfortable. Creating multilingual spaces is not only the responsibility of the interpreters, but everyone here. That's what we're going to share some guidelines with you. For those presenting today, you can help by speaking at a moderate pace, loudly and clearly. If we need you to slow down or speak up, we'll let you know through the chat. For all participants, please don't suffer in silence. If the interpretation is not working or you're having other technical difficulties, please drop a message in the chat so we can help you. Zoom interpretation has been enabled. You should now see a globe in the lower part of your screen with a message about language interpretation. Click on the globe and select the language in which you would like to participate and listen during today's session. If you're joining us through a smartphone or tablet, you can click on the three dots on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, select language interpretation, and then choose your language. Make sure you click done, and then you'll be ready to go. Hola, muy buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Silvin y junto con mi cointérprete Abraham estaremos interpretando la sesión de hoy de inglés a español. Primero que nada, queremos agradecerle a todos los organizadores del evento de hoy por su compromiso a la justicia del lenguaje y al crear espacios multilingües. La justicia del lenguaje incluye poder hablar, entender y ser entendidos en el idioma en el que uno se sienta más cómodo. El crear espacios multilingües no es solo la responsabilidad de los intérpretes, sino todas las personas presentes. Por eso les vamos a compartir algunas pautas. Para los presentadores de hoy, pueden ayudar hablando a un ritmo moderado, voz alta y claramente. Si necesitamos que hablen más despacio o más fuerte, se les dejará saber a través del chat. Para todos los participantes, por favor no sufran en silencio. Si la interpretación no está funcionando o está teniendo otros problemas técnicos, déjenos saber a través del chat. La función de interpretación vía Zoom ya ha sido encendida y verá un globo en la parte baja de sus pantallas con un mensaje sobre la interpretación de idiomas. Haga clic en el globo, elige el idioma en el que les gustaría participar y escuchar durante la sesión de hoy. Si nos acompaña a través de su celular o una tableta, puede hacer clic en los tres puntitos en la esquina derecha de la parte baja de su pantalla, elija interpretación de idiomas y después seleccione el idioma en el que desea participar. Asegúrese de hacer clic en finalizado o done y estarán listos. Adelante, Jorge.
Great. Thank you so much, Erwin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Highlands Lynchburg Plan Second Public Meeting. My name is Jorge Bustamante, and I am the Planning Manager with Harris County Precinct 2, Commissioner Adrian Garcia's office. I am really glad you all are joining us tonight. I'm personally really excited about tonight. The project team has been working very hard on taking in all the feedback and coming up with recommendations to present to you tonight. We've also run these recommendations through the task force. To me, this is the most fun part of the process, but please bear with us because this will be a little long since we have a lot of recommendations. I also want to say that this is a great opportunity to let us know if you feel like we're on the right track. If you feel that we're not on the right track, let us know as well. We're welcome to all the feedback, and today's session is not the last time for input. We are going to be recording this meeting and we'll be posting it on the website. We'll also be posting the slides both in English and in Spanish. For all the people who are not able to attend today, And of course, we're always just a phone call or an email away. So with that, I'll hand it over to Amanda to lead us through the presentation tonight and go through the recommendations. Feel free to chime in at any time and let us know if you have any comments.
Thanks, Jorge.
Amanda?
All right, so tonight's agenda. So thank you, Jorge, for that introduction, and welcome everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your night. We'll go through a quick introduction of the Harris County team and project team. We'll go through our project status, where we are now in the process, and what's to come. We're going to go through our public survey results, the high-level highlights of the survey and what we heard and the main takeaways we got from the survey. Then that's going to lead into some of our identified needs that we'll go through. And then we'll go through the plan objectives. And then we'll go through our recommendations. And as Jorge mentioned, our recommendations we did present to the task force previously. And then we'll go through a summary and we'll ask for feedback, and we'll go through the next steps and what is to come for the rest of the project. And as I want to echo Jorge's message, we do want to make sure we're on the right track, and we want to make sure that we are really capturing the needs of this community. So please feel free to raise your hand or do the chat at any time that you feel if we totally lost you or if you have questions. This is meant to be an interaction of sorts. So with that, we will keep moving. All right, so a brief introduction of the Harris County team. On this call today, we have Jorge Bustamante. He is the project manager from Precinct 2. We have Gretchen Knowles, our community liaison. Brian Brown is our senior planner from Harris County Engineering. Alberto's wife just had a baby, so he is not on the call. But we do have Fatima. She is also with Harris County Engineering in the planning division. She is on the call. And Ismat from the Harris County Public Health team. She is on the call as well. From Clark Condon, we're the lead consultant on this team. We're a landscape architecture company. I am Amanda Haney. This is Mary Kylers. We have a vast team here that has helped us put all these recommendations into place. We have an urban planning consultant, Jamie Masterson. We have economic development consultants from the Goodman Corporation, Jim Webb and Monisha. And Jim is on the call tonight. From our environmental side, we have our consultants from Holloway, Allie and Nick. And then from the mobility and transportation portion of this project, we have LAN Engineering, that's Ricky Gonzalez. And then also on this call and has helped us with those beautiful signs that you've seen all over your community, Possible Missions, we do have Charmaine Taylor and Paula Mendoza. They are both on this call tonight. All right, so we have a message from our commissioner.
Hey everybody, Adrian Garcia, County Commissioner of the phenomenal Precinct 2. First, let me continue to say, because I don't think we can say it enough, Happy New Year to you and your family, and may it be better than 2021 for sure, and most definitely better than 2020. I have a lot of high expectations that 2022 will be our best year yet. And why? Because so many of you are getting vaccinated like I've been. The way we can put this pandemic to rest is by urging our friends and family to get their vaccines. I am triple vaccinated, so is my family, and so I'm hopeful that you will get yours as well. If you need information on where testing is available, where the vaccines are available, please follow me on all of our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or simply go to a website at hcp2.com, hcp2.com, and you can get the information there. Or simply call our call center at 713-274-2222. That's where my folks can provide you all the information you need for all your questions. And look, if you've got questions or concerns about the vaccine, I completely get it. I do, I really do. All I ask you to do is please speak to your doctor, speak to a medical professional, help them answer your questions and your concerns, and hopefully that will lead you to get your vaccines. But look, I have no doubt that that vaccine is saving lives. I'm hearing it from the folks in our public health department, from the hospital district. I'm hearing it from other medical professionals. And so I'm hopeful that it is doing what it needs to do. And if you have not yet gotten yours, hopefully you will step forward to get yours, because I want you and your family to be safe and healthy. Now, on to what has gotten us here, and that is the community plan for Highlands, Lynchburg. Now, I know redistricting has happened and Highlands is no longer in precinct 2, but Highlands remains in Adrian Garcia's heart. And so we're going to continue to work on Highlands, Lynchburg, regardless of who your commissioner now is, because you gave me the opportunity to work for you, and we started this process, and we're not going to leave Highlands behind regardless. So we're going to continue to keep the Highlands Lynchburg community together through this planning process. Now, my team and our consultants have been working with so many of you prior to this renewed highest risk level that we are in the pandemic. We've had one-on-one meetings with many of you. We've had virtual meetings with many of you, and you have given us so much information that now it's our opportunity to represent this information to you to make sure we're on the same page, to make sure we're moving in the right direction. So thank you for your involvement. I ask you to stay involved, because this community planning process is what I like to refer to as Revive to Thrive. And that basically means revitalizing your neighborhoods, and that it not be done simply through gentrification, but making sure that you can remain proud of the community you live in, because in other areas we're bringing in new sidewalks, hike and bike trails. We're doing work with the utilities, and we're bringing in street lighting and making sure that folks can enjoy the neighborhood like you did a long time ago. I remember when I was a kid, I played in the streets all day long until Mom would tell me, time to get inside, kid. I want our kids to have those same type of experiences, and they can with Revive to Thrive. And that is how your input into our community plan for Highlands Lynchburg will help us. And so now that you've given us some perspective, we're presenting that information back to you to make sure that we don't have to tweak it here or there, and make sure we have a solid plan. Now, this plan is not going to be something that's just going to stay on my desk. It's going to be alive. It's going to be a working document. It's going to be on our website so that we can track our progress. You're going to help us set priorities within the projects that are being identified, so that we know what we can get done right away, what will get done next, and what will take some work to get done into the future. But it will continue to provide us those important targets to aim for, and to make sure that we're delivering for you who have given us that input. I'm very excited. I hope you are. So stay tuned for this presentation, because I think you're going to like it. Now stay safe, stay healthy, and again, have a prosperous new year.
Awesome. That was a great message from our commissioner. If you are just joining us, we are talking about the Highlands and Lynchburg Community Plan, and we are going to go through the recommendations tonight. Before we get into that, we're going to turn it over to Jorge Bustamante and Gretchen Knowles to talk a little bit more about the redistricting and ask if anybody has any questions other than what the commissioner just covered in the video.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, I think Commissioner said it well. Highlands is now split in between precincts, But that doesn't mean that this effort is going to be split. We're going to treat Highlands and Lynchburg as one community, and we're going to continue through this community plan together. We have extended an invitation to our counterparts at Precinct 3 to attend our task force meetings and our public meetings, and we'll be keeping them in the loop as we move forward, since ultimately the implementation of this plan within the Precinct 3 boundaries will be up to Precinct 3. But again, you know, there's about half of Highlands that's still in Precinct 2, and all of Lynchburg that's still in Precinct 2. So we look forward to continuing this process and you know, treating this community as one, as it should be.
Thanks, Jorge. All right, so where we are in the project, we are right where the blue circled area is. This is public meeting number 2. So we are in the midst of finalizing our report. We're writing our chapters for the full report that will come out at the end of the project. And we are in the recommendations phase. So to back up, we had our first public meeting in August, then we had some task force meetings in September and December. And then we felt like we needed to regroup with the task force and vet a few more items. So we did that in January, and now we feel comfortable coming to the public with some recommendations. So that's this meeting. And then we'll have a future public meeting sometime early this year as well. We did have our public survey that was from October to December. And in the next slide, I'm going to go through some of the results. Okay, so we had 118 completed surveys. The majority of the people who took the survey either lived or worked in Highlands. And the length of time that was specified, the majority was 20+ years. So we did have a range of ages. The majority of the ages were between 55 and 64, and then also 35 and 44. So, and even actually 45 to 54, that was a big range there. And then it goes down to 65+. Then we had about 10% of the people who filled out the survey were between 25 and 34, and then only a few were 18 or under. Okay, so the community strengths that were identified, this goes in order of the options that were given in the survey. So the number one community strength that was identified was faith-based organizations, then schools, then a sense of community, then parks and trails, neighborhoods and nonprofits, law enforcement, housing affordability, then employment opportunities, and then infrastructure and retail and shopping. So again, that is it's ranked 10 being the highest priority or highest community strength per this question. Then we asked areas needing improvements. So again, the top is the majority of people who answered this as a top priority, and it goes down the line from there. So public safety and crime was a top area needing improvement, law enforcement, traffic, parks, trails, and outdoor activity, schools, then retail and shopping, access to healthy foods, and access to health services. So the two top ones, 8 and 7, those had very close percentages, and so those are both highlighted in orange. Then desired community improvements. We have safety, education, mobility, then connections, and that's neighborhood connections, that's connections to the community. And then jobs, businesses, and then you can see the rest following the line there: environment, beautification, healthcare, history, and mental health. For desired mobility improvements, I'll name the top 4 here: sidewalks, roads, street lights, which we did hear a lot of comments on, and law enforcement. And then for desired future developments, we have the top 2: small businesses and recreation opportunities. Again, as Jorge mentioned, this will all be online, so you can take a longer look at this if you need. So what we heard, so this, if you remember the survey, if you took it, thank you very much. It was split out into categories, and those icons at the top represent the categories that were the questions were split into. Then from that, so that's more the big picture idea. Then we took that and we really narrowed down into each of these categories, and we identified what the needs were for the from the survey and how we were going to move forward and how these key ideas were going to inform our recommendations. So those are increased public safety, increased law enforcement presence, increased outreach and aid and social services, grow and foster community involvement, a general beautification and aesthetic enhancement of the community, improve the condition and the efficiency of the roads and drainage systems, aid in some of the environmental awareness, which we will talk about, introduce new opportunities for economic growth and to stimulate the economy, and to maintain community character. So those key principles and those issues and concerns that were identified in the public survey, and then also through our efforts of community engagement and outreach, those have identified what we feel the needs of the community are. And that's translated here into three main objectives for this plan. We want to create connectivity. That's through the community, that's through infrastructure and the parks, that's through multimodal transportation and encouraging that, and just really enhancing the community atmosphere. Then fostering community growth. And this is prosperity through civic and social initiatives, and to help manage and implement the desires and the needs of the community, and also potentially attract future businesses. And then the third objective is to improve public safety and also awareness, and that will be through partnerships and agencies or nonprofits, and provide the needed social services and aid that we heard in the survey. Okay, our overall recommendations. So I'm going to run through these at a high level, and I'm going to leave this up as I talk so that you can kind of understand which ones we're going through. But each one of these we will go in greater depth in the following slides. So overall recommendations: a creation of a civic core district, community enhancement and community development, increased public safety, increased law enforcement, roadway reconstruction and improvement projects, the creation of sidewalks and shared use paths, improved access to and accessibility for handicap and for children and families to the parks and the surrounding neighborhoods. Amenitizing the Highlands Reservoir, this amazing amenity that you have right in your backyard. The creation of nature parks. The creation of gateways and monuments into the community to really set you apart and have that identity. And then general streetscape beautification. And then lastly, the creation of a management district. So I'm going to pause here and ask if anybody has any questions or any comments or big picture thoughts. Feel free to utilize the chat or raise your hand or speak out loud. And as Jorge mentioned, we just want to make sure that we're on the right track with this overall recommendations. And again, if you don't have comments right now, I understand we will be going through these in more detail. And so if you have questions later on or you want to save your questions, that is fine as well.
All right, we do have one question in regards to the management district. We have a whole series of slides at the end of that. So at the end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and go through those, which will explain in detail both what a management district is, what it can do for the community, and then how we see it benefiting Highlands and Lynchburg area specifically. So we will spend a significant amount of time talking about that at the end of this presentation. Since we haven't received any other questions right now, let's go ahead and go into the details. We're going to start with talking about economic growth and development. So in general, we want to create the atmosphere for new businesses and affordable housing within the community based on the feedback that we've received from all of you. This we see being implemented through incentivizing builders, creating opportunities for new construction and affordable housing. As part of this, to encourage new businesses and new development, we envision a redevelopment of the Main Street area, and this also correlates in with our vision for the civic core space, which we'll go into more detail in just a moment. So this is, creating the opportunity for restaurants, cafes, and small scale retail elements that will really support the local community and give opportunities for residents to shop local and be able to interact within their immediate community. And then the last item as part of this economic growth and development is exploring the idea of recreation and tourism. There is a project ongoing now that includes improvements to the Lynchburg ferry. So thinking about that as part of this large system, potentially improving access to the reservoir, and having people be able to come and fish within the reservoir in an easier way. So seeing what other elements that we can implement into this recreation component. So the civic core, we've identified a space that focuses around many of the existing public and civic elements within the community. These include the existing library, churches, several of the schools. This all falls within the north boundary is East Houston Street, and the south boundary is Wallaceville Road. It extends from Highlands Community Park to the west and all the way to Thompson Road to the east. So within this zone, we want to improve connectivity, provide opportunities for people to be able to walk in between all of these wonderful facilities that are already located within the zone, and then also encourage new businesses to come within this area. Activities we see potentially happening are pop-up events, food trucks, and gatherings, whether that be at any of the existing civic spaces or also in the park spaces that all lie within the zone. But starting to create a very cohesive identity for this space and ensure that we have adequate opportunities for movement, both vehicular and pedestrian throughout here. So you can see we've highlighted improvements on the roads. The green represents showing sidewalks on either side of the streets. The blue represents possibly striping on the roadway surface to designate pedestrian zones. And then also looking at a cohesive beautification and branding through the central area along Main Street. And building upon this, there was a CIP within the public library system that was submitted previously. And in this CIP, it was envisioned that the Stratford Branch Library could serve a greater role within the community. We think this is a wonderful opportunity to support this idea. As part of this, this would give opportunities for more community space, better access to a broader range of books and technology within there, and be able to offer classes to the community and partner with other organizations who could also come into this facility and help bolster the community from within. So this is one element that we think is critical to just help enhancing both economic development, but also fostering community. Other elements that build upon this is working towards partnerships with Workforce Solutions or Baker Ripley or even Lee College to encourage and improve education within the area and be able to offer jobs and opportunities within the community itself. These types of classes, they could be hosted in the community center and the expanded library or any of the nearby facilities that Workforce Solutions or Baker Ripley also has. So really trying to take a broad brush approach of both providing the facilities and also access to these classes that are available within the area. And the third component of this enhancement for the community also includes a broader outreach of community programs. This includes everything ranging from after-school programs for children, increase the amount of senior programs that already exist in the area. And then also giving the opportunity for beautification days and other ways to bring the community together. And then the last item is potentially adding farmers markets. We know there's one current grocery store within the community, and feel like the farmers market would not only provide a community event, but also another opportunity for purchasing food. Some of the other elements that we've explored, we heard both in our surveys and in our discussions with different community members when we were out and about, concerns about drug awareness. So what we see is enhancing the current outreach program. We understand that there is already a DARE program that's happening at one of the local schools, trying to find opportunities to expand drug awareness to different age groups and partnering with the local law enforcement to achieve this. There's also other Harris County departments that have drug awareness programs that we would like to see those programs brought directly into the Highlands and Lynchburg communities, so that it becomes more of a topic of discussion and increases awareness through multiple age groups. The other element to this is also improving homeless outreach. There's several existing organizations within the region, whether they are county organizations or nonprofits, but partnering with these different groups to provide access to those community members within this region who are in need of help. And part of that comes from both meeting immediate needs, but then also providing mental health programming and other types of programming. And in general, supporting advocacy for this region of Harris County. So another component of all of this, really, focusing on this as community enhancements, is also trying to find opportunities to increase patrolling services. This is one of the items that we heard on the survey and in our discussions with everyone. How can we improve the police presence within the community? So there's a number of grants that are available. Some of those here you see on the lower right. It's called the Community Oriented Policing Services. This is one of the funding options where grants can be applied for and can supplement the existing service that the Harris County Sheriff's is already providing for the area. The way that we see this implemented is providing either a contract, which you see listed here as option A, a contract for constables or sheriffs to supplement the existing service and add additional people to patrol the neighborhood. Another way that these grants can be administered is also through private security. And so this starts to play into this idea of the management district. So this is an opportunity for the management district to potentially play a role in the implementation, the funding, and applying for these grants that can bring these additional patrolling services to the community. So we think this is one of the elements that a management district can offer to you all, and we'll go through some of the other options a little bit later on. So I just went through several slides. I'd like to go ahead and pause right here so we can break for any questions or concerns, specifically around all of these elements that focus on enhancing the community and economic development. So you don't happen to have the data about the percent of people supporting a management district on the broken out from the survey data?
It wasn't specifically on the survey data.
Okay.
But we will talk about the management district and we can address that question.
Okay, so Angela, I see your chat here. We don't have a specific percentage to convey. But we can go through more of the management district opportunities and what it offers in just a little while. All right. So I don't see any other questions, so let's go ahead and move on to the next set of slides. All right, so this is still me. Mobility and safety are other aspects that were highlighted high on the list, if you remember when Amanda went through the survey results. So part of this is improving not only pedestrian access, we know that there's limited sidewalks within the community today, but also ensuring that even the driver experience as well is safe. So the ways that this can be done is figuring out opportunities to alleviate congestion, integrating street lights so that there's better visibility, at all times of the day. And then also doing studies to help identify where traffic signals may aid in alleviating some of that congestion and helping, limit accidents and pedestrian accidents. We had some reports that indicated some pedestrian accidents at these intersections that you see listed here: Canal Street at Main Street, Wallaceville at Thompson, and San Jacinto at Main Street. So trying to address some of the immediate needs and locations where we've seen some issues. Some other elements to this is also improving the existing street signage. And this can range from anything with the no through trucks or just general signage, street names and things like that, but really helping people be able to navigate the community better. Another aspect of this mobility is building upon the public transit. I'm sure you've seen there's been one new stop installed within your community. It would look like the image here on the lower left. So this is the Harris County transit system. So you can see the existing routes shown on the map. And so we have routes both in the blue and the pink and the orange. So what we did was study, where do we need additional stops, and then where does service need to be extended? For example, there is no access to Lee College for night classes. So this public transportation improvement also improves access and enhances the community. So it serves a dual purpose on some of these key elements that were identified for the community to provide better access to classes and education. So looking at ways that we can implement solutions that achieve multiple goals.
And just as a clarification, the orange would be what we would propose as additional stops and additional extensions of the route. And those are shown here in these 3 different areas. Okay, so continuing on with mobility and infrastructure recommendations, roadway improvements. So the purpose of this is to create safer streets and reduce crashes and create a more walkable community and a safer pedestrian experience. Also, there is a lot of truck traffic, and we did get a lot of comments on that from the survey as well. So our recommendations would be to launch a corridor study throughout or of the main streets, and those are shown in blue and also in green on this map over here. So for Main Street specifically, we would do a corridor study, a corridor safety study. And then for Wallaceville, Thompson Road, East Wallaceville, Thompson Road, and East Houston, we would explore sidewalk and street light additions. Also on this map you see is the proposed signalized intersections that Mary ran through in the previous slide, and then also the existing signalized intersections. Those are shown in the darker blue. So I'm going to expand upon these 4 streets here in the next slides. So the corridor study. So this would be for Main Street. So this would be a phased approach. Phase 1 would be to launch a corridor safety study. Phase 2 would be to consider some interim improvements, and that could be road striping and directional signage. This would improve the traffic progression. It would also improve we could improve traffic progression by improving some of the pavement conditions. We could update some of the traffic signals to make sure they're properly timed. And that could drastically improve some of this congestion. And then a phase 3 approach would be that based on the results of that corridor study, we could select portions of the cross-section of the road to reconstruct. And this could be to promote a safer and more efficient pedestrian and vehicular experience for the people who are driving and also the people who are walking. And this could include thicker paving, pedestrian walkways, street lighting, branded banners, specifically within the civic core area that Mary pointed out earlier. And as a note, it would not encroach on any existing buildings or businesses. So we're not proposing that we're going to enact eminent domain or anything and go into people's businesses or spaces. So for the other 3 roads that were listed on that first slide, those are what we are considering sidewalk and streetlight improvements. And the recommendation here, there's 2 options. One, a road realignment, I'll call it. And that would be to shift the lanes of traffic so that we could allow for an 8 to a 10-foot shared use path on the south side of the street. And that would connect from Main Street to Highlands Reservoir. So that would cover up the culverts and convert that to a culvert system from an open ditch system. And it would allow for the sidewalk to be on top of that. And you can see that in the cross section shown that I'm circling here. We would also incorporate streetlights on both sides of the street. Option B would be to maintain the road alignment and incorporate a slotted curb system and create a shared use path on the south side of the street. And that's what you can see here. That too would cover up the ditch and the culvert system and allow for the sidewalk. So creation of a shared use path. So we have a few different areas where we are proposing shared use paths. Some of them were pointed out and highlighted in the civic core diagram. But this recommendation specifically is about the paths to schools. So we want to create a safe and a walkable pedestrian realm, and specifically accessible routes for students to walk and to bike to school. And this would also create more connectivity through the community, but also throughout the neighborhoods. And this recommendation would be to adopt certain recommendations from the district-wide, the Goose Creek ISD district-wide Safe Routes to School plan. And we could partner with these local schools and establish safe routes to schools and do that as a programming event. And we could host different activities like walk to school days or bike to school days. And this would really prioritize the pedestrian and the bicyclist over some of the other infrastructure improvements to and around the schools. Another shared use path would be what we are considering the Lynchburg loop. And this is to create more opportunities for outdoor recreation, connect the community of Lynchburg, and to encourage exercise and health through outdoor activity. This would also provide a multimodal mode of transportation. So this would be to create the shared use path, and I'll explain this diagram here. In the darker blue, you see we are proposing sidewalks next to the roadway. In the blue, the orange, that could be where we would do on-street pedestrian paths, and that could be striped on the roadways. The roadways in this community are a little bit less busy than some of the roadways in Highlands, and so there's an opportunity here to stripe on the road. And then we would create this shared use path, and that could be a portion of the road, but also a portion of built sidewalk, and that could that would get you to some of these businesses and amenities such as the Burnett Park, Four Corners, Church on the Rock over here. And then what you see dashed would be that loop system, and it could incorporate mile markers and signage, and it would be called the Lynchburg Loop. So some more community enhancement recommendations. Mary went through some community development recommendations earlier, but this is more of the enhancement side. And so we would want to create a sense of place and identification for the community and just overall improve the aesthetic. So the recommendation here would be to create a gateway into the community. And that would be along I-10, and that could be a series of monuments and landscape improvements in the medians, and then also along the bermed setbacks as you come off of I-10 and you exit Crosby Lynchburg. So that's these blue areas here shown in this diagram. The orange is shown is potential locations. We're not maybe saying all of these locations, but potential locations for monuments. And then part of this would be to enhance the signage, the Highlands signage. So that's shown in this bottom image here of what could be planting that median and really sprucing up the Highlands signage as your front entry and your front door of the community. We could utilize some planted buffers to screen some of the industry as you exit off Crosby Lynchburg and you head into Highlands, and just some general beautification along Main Street. And just as a note, all of the plant material that would be utilized would definitely be something proposed to be hardy, durable, and low maintenance, and of course, low impact. So environmental quality updates. We have a few environmental quality recommendations that I'll go through in the next slide, but I just want to give an update right now on the Superfund sites. So the EPA has issued a unilateral administrative order for cleanup of the San Jacinto River waste pit. And it's the southern impoundment portion. This order has allowed for a cleanup to move into the construction phase. And it will begin with creating work plans, procuring materials, and securing contractors. That's the first step. And these steps that the EPA has ordered are anticipated to take place over the next year. And they're hoping that they will get the ground, hit the ground running and start with construction in the fall of 2022. So these efforts are largely monitored and supported by the precinct, but also THEO, which stands for Texas Health and Environment Alliance. And we want to note that their efforts, and a special thank you to their efforts for keeping us really in the loop and really this advocacy effort that they have. They do have a website where they have a lot of different information and useful resources to really engage that awareness component. And also they do have town hall meetings that are virtual that you can attend, that they'll give updates on what the progress is. So for this plan, which is separate than any of the EPA efforts, but we do support the EPA's efforts, would be to identify and understand the environmental issues within this community, and to increase the public awareness and of these environmental conditions, just as THEO is doing. So a recommendation could be to site an air monitoring system within Highlands. We would perform a phase 1 environmental study on any land that is slated for redevelopment. And that's to understand if there is a threat from any existing underground oil or gas tanks. And then launch a grassroots education program. And this is about keeping your water healthy, keeping your well healthy, making sure that everybody is understanding what healthy is and what the risks could be, and really just taking health into their own hands. And then also reestablishing some of the fish advisory consumption signs near the San Jacinto River. And there's an example photographed in this top left photo here. So the park system is great. And we know this firsthand when we went out to the community to do our engagement and our community efforts. And the precinct recently put out a parks plan, a master plan that was all about the health of the parks and about, it gave a score to each of the parks. And these park scores were very high comparatively to some of the parks in other communities. So that's something to be very proud of. However, we can improve upon this by improving access and the connectivity to these parks. So we would want to promote safe and ADA compliant community connections to the parks and provide those more opportunities for community gatherings within these parks. So those recommendations would be to provide ADA access to each of the 4 parks in the area. And that could be creating these pedestrian accesses to the surrounding neighborhoods. Right now, some of the parks you can only enter them from one side. And so if you live in the neighborhood on the other side of the park, you would have to drive all the way around to get to the front entrance. So figuring out ways to create more access to the parks, more seating opportunities, specifically at Stratford Park and Highlands Sports Complex. There's some bridges right now that go over the channel into Highlands Sports Complex in the backside past the parking area. And we would want to incorporate an 8-foot wide accessible path so that that's really connected to a pedestrian trail and makes it more of a usable space. We also have heard comments about the seating and the scoreboards at Highlands Sports Complex. So we would want to support renovating those and upgrading that. And then Allison R. Pierce, the nature sanctuary that's in the northern part of the study area, we want to incorporate a trail system there with boardwalks and educational signage. Safe access. So along with these connections in the community and creating access from multiple different portions of the park, we want to, if we're opening up access and not just the front access, we want to make sure that it's safe. And so one of those areas is this connection off of Cherry Street for Highlands Community Park. And we would want to renovate this pedestrian connection here to create it as more of a gateway with lighting and an improved gate so that it's more transparent and it's more user-friendly. We'd want to incorporate some signage and possibly a trash receptacle. And so this is just a little concept over here shown on what certain things could be done to improve the access at this specific park. Along with that would be the improvements to Highlands Reservoir. As I mentioned, this is an amazing amenity that you guys have in your backyard. It's very well maintained. It is it's a beautiful freshwater system. And there is currently some fishing that occurs in this area. And so we would want to renovate those fishing piers along Canal Road and Fig Orchard and Wade Road to be ADA accessible. Make them wider so that they can incorporate multiple uses or multiple users at one time. And also we would want to incorporate some parallel parking so that these can become more of an amenity and a destination so people can pack up for the day and go to go fishing for the day. Currently, there's the dirt areas where cars do park, so we would want to turn that into an area that's a little bit more usable for the community, and that could be at the 2 locations I mentioned. And then also, we would want to consider some future partnerships with SJRA for some amenities to this reservoir. So some of those amenities could include fishing piers and fishing docks, as you see in these photos here, kayak launches, possibly even disc golf in some of the areas that are within the reservoir but aren't inundated with water. So SJRA, if you're unaware, is the San Jacinto River Authority. They're a great organization that takes care of this reservoir and the channels within the community. And they've been around for quite some time. And part of this plan would be to partner with them and promote that relationship between SJRA and the precinct and the community, and really make sure that we are providing this amenity to the whole entire community. And the last one of these similar recommendations before we take a quick break and move into the management district portion of this presentation is the creation of nature parks. So this would be to conserve and provide access to the natural amenities within the community. So I mentioned the reservoir and its natural amenity, but there are about 30% of this entire study area of Highlands that are wetlands right now. And so we want to create a long-term plan to restore these wetlands and really turn them into opportunity for education and for recreation and this just natural destination. So we want to partner with some of the landowners to create what is called a conservation easement. And this would protect and conserve the natural habitats. It would bring more habitat and more wildlife to the area. It would make it more diverse and create a more healthy ecosystem. And so some of those two options would be Banana Bend Park, and that is to convert the land that's owned by the Port Authority south of Highlands Shores Drive into a nature conservancy with bird watching opportunities and docks and piers and educational opportunities. And then another would be to create a future nature center at Allison R. Pierce, along with some boardwalks and nature trails. So there's really an opportunity here to expand upon some of the natural amenities that are in this area. And with that, I will take a brief break and open it up for anybody who has questions, comments, or concerns.
Hey, Amanda, I do want to note, Angela Chandler did post in the chat about the management district. Thank you, Angela. That's a really good reference document from the attorneys at ABHR for everyone's reference. So I do want to say I think the management district recommendation is up next. So we'll work on that here in a second.
Thanks for the comment, Randy, about utilizing the reservoir. We too think that's a great opportunity. All right, well, we will have ample time to talk about all of the recommendations and also the management district recommendations after this next portion. And I know that we probably will get several questions about the management district. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim Webb. He is a principal over at the Goodman Corporation. They are a consultant on our project team, and they are also leading the efforts on the McNair-Lenis community plan, also with the precinct, and that's in the neighboring community to you guys. So these two plans are going on concurrently, if you remember from our first public meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity. Hope everybody's having a wonderful night. There's a lot of projects, initiatives, and recommendations in the material that has been discussed so far, and it's really a lot to prioritize, fund, and design and build moving forward, which is why one of the recommendations that we had going through this planning process was to consider the creation of a management district. A management district would enable the creation of a political subdivision to help implement a lot of the recommendations that have been discussed tonight. That includes the provision of safety and security, addressing some nuisance issues in the community, serving as an economic development organization, and attracting, creating, and retaining small businesses. Leveraging grants and funding for a lot of different areas. A lot of the park improvements that were discussed, the mobility improvements that were discussed, all of those things are projects that management districts in the Houston region have historically funded and leveraged grant funding to implement. We also, one reason why we recommended or we're considering the recommendation for a management district is to create enable the creation of a forum for community and advocacy. These communities, you're unincorporated. You guys are working very well with the county and with the precinct and soon with a new precinct. But we recognize that there was perhaps a need for more of a grassroots, community-led, community-managed political subdivision. And absent incorporation, a management district could serve that role. Next slide. So just to provide a little bit of a primer here, what is a management district? And some of the information that Angela shared in that PDF is very similar to this. That's a very good reference, actually. But management districts, they're political subdivisions of the state. So they're governmental entities. They generally exist to provide supplemental services over and above what another political subdivision is providing. So if there's a management district where there's also a city or a county, the district is providing supplemental services, but not supplanting services provided by somebody else. So they're not duplicating service or providing over and above service, essentially. They're also a means to allow property owners to work together to supplement those services and amplify and leverage benefits. The districts are created by special law, generally through a legislative process. So every 2 years when we go through our legislative process here in Texas, generally there are several that are created throughout the state. They can also be created through a petition process through TCEQ, but either way, to enable their ability to leverage an assessment, a local petition process is required. Again, they're considered a political subdivision of the state, so they're a governmental entity, so they're eligible for grants and loans, discretionary funding. They have the ability to leverage bonds to fund projects and initiatives. And how they generally generate revenue is through levying an assessment, which can be thought of as a tax. It's a little bit different, but it's similar in nature, on commercial, industrial, non-residential property types to pay for services. Next slide. So, yep, there you go. So districts are a little different than municipal utility districts. They're a little bit different than tax increment reinvestment zones or TERS. Folks in this meeting may have heard about those other organizations and kind of heard these special district terms kind of thrown around, but there are some distinctions. So we're talking about a municipal management district. And what we did with this table here was try to delineate the differences between management district, a chamber of commerce, because we understand that there are some pretty impactful chambers in this area, and then water districts, or what are really municipal utility districts. And generally, you can see that management districts have broader powers. These are not things that they have to do, but things they can do. And it allows them to impact areas that your typical chamber, your typical MUD either can't or won't generally address. So again, that includes applying for and receiving federal grants, providing safety and security services, providing lighting. That could be in the form of pedestrian lighting, could be in the form of street lighting, infrastructure improvements. That could be all manner of infrastructure improvements. That could be public transportation, that could be roads, that can be bridges, that could be drainage. You name it, management district can do it. Public realm maintenance. This could be litter abatement. This could be mowing. This could be graffiti abatement. Management districts do all these things in the Houston region. And economic development. Management districts are generally thought of as economic development tools. So oftentimes, but not always, they act as really a bona fide economic development organization. And just to clarify, every management district is a little bit different. So really, they decide to exercise their powers at different levels based on the priorities and the needs in a given community. Next slide. So just kind of continue the overview a little bit. Governance and operations of a district. So their districts are governed by a service and assessment plan. So it's a document. It's a living document because it's created, it's revised, and then it's got a certain lifespan. You can kind of think about it as a charter. And what those service and assessment plans generally do are describe, okay, here are the needs in the community. Here's how the district is going to address those needs. And here's some background on specific projects and initiatives. Theoretically in this area, this community plan could serve as a good framework for that service and assessment plan, because it would say, okay, here are the needs in the community, here are some projects, and the district could say, okay, look, we want to fund these projects moving forward. Districts are governed by a board of directors who are appointed. The authorizing legislation that would create the district can prescribe that appointment process. So it could say that they're appointed and concurred with by Harris County, by the precinct. If there's a city in that area, they can prescribe that process as well, or that sort of approval process. But at the end of the day, the board they're your peers. And generally, the board is composed of individuals that are assessed by the management district. So it's sort of a built-in check and balance to ensure that folks that are paying the assessment are seeing the fruits of the district's assessment. The size of the board and involvement of the board can vary. So it's kind of like a municipal structure. There are some cities that have a strong mayor government, and the mayor's in the weeds doing stuff every day. Others have a city administrator form of government where the mayor's, part-time individual, and there's a staff and administrator that does all the work. And boards of management districts are very similar. You've got some that are very involved, some that just delegate to staff, some that are sort of hybrids with committee structures. It just depends on the given district and what their preference is. Districts can be dissolved at any time by a majority vote of the board, or through a petition of property owners. The state legislature has gradually over the years made it a little bit easier for management districts to be dissolved through the petition process by property owners. That's another check and balance that's been put in place to ensure that if there is a district that's created that's not serving their constituents, the public can say, you know what, let's circulate a petition, let's dissolve this thing. We want to do something different. So again, why we recommend a district, these communities are unincorporated areas. There's no other municipal or local government entity to address a lot of these issues. Again, you've got the county, but the county is a large entity with a large geography, a lot of issues to address. A management district can help distill and synthesize the community problems that are here, or challenges, I should say, and then recommend, fund, prioritize improvements. And that goes to that second bullet point there, that really the issues we're talking about tonight are probably best addressed by local voices and local solutions. We'll get to what we expect the revenue side of the equation to look like moving forward. The revenue that we are estimating is not, extremely high right now, but I've worked with a lot of districts throughout the Houston region, and I've seen them evolve over 12 years in some cases. And I've seen them generate a very, very small amount of revenue initially. And then over time, as commercial and industrial development expands, I've seen that revenue grow. And I've also seen a lot of communities that are like, geez, I wish we created this district 20 years ago. So that's why we're saying, if this is a viable recommendation and the community concurs, the best time to do this is now. Districts can leverage, work with, and strengthen the existing organization that exists. So those non-governmental organizations like the chambers, and the district can champion and oversee a lot of the recommendations that we have in this plan. Next slide. Okay, so here are some examples of successful districts. I have personally worked with all these districts. I've seen the things that they can do and the benefit they can provide to the community. There's a lot of information here, so I'm just going to kind of pick out a couple of things. One real great example, I think, is the West Chase district. They have really transformed their community in the west side of Houston. They have done a lot of project types that are similar to the recommendations that the Clark Condon team has recommended here in terms of beautification, parks, trails, green spaces, security, safety, you name it. And they've really helped transform that area. And they have also been able to leverage a significant amount of discretionary funding for a variety of project types to really help accelerate their capital improvement plan and just do a lot. There's so much more has been done in West Houston in the West Chase district because of the West Chase Management District. They've also put things in place that just provide community betterment, community gardens. There's a new park they just built, which has a community garden in it. It's really just a gem for the community. I don't want to belabor the point, but all these similar districts here, they're similar success stories, and they're all doing things that are consistent with the projects and initiatives within this plan. Next slide. Okay. So revenue projections. Districts, what they can do is they can provide a level of sustained and consistent funding for your projects and your initiatives. Like I referenced previously, that funding is likely to grow over time as the entire region experiences economic growth and continued economic betterment. These projections are based on the appraised value of properties. So again, this is non-residential, this is just commercial, this is just residential. This is based on publicly accessible HCAD That's Harris County Appraisal District information on an aggregate level. So basically what we did was we just looked at the areas of the communities as defined in the planning efforts, summed up the assessed value, and assumed, okay, if we took a range of management district assessment, anywhere from 10 cents to 14 cents per 100, what would that assessment look like? And we use that range of between 10 and 14 cents because that's generally what management districts in the Houston region levy. And you come up with, yearly estimates of anywhere between $110,000 a year and $152,000 a year. Again, it's day one, year one, it's not a tremendous amount of money. But $150,000 to put towards your projects and initiatives is more revenue than is there currently for these things. That could fund, theoretically, supplemental safety and security. It could fund litter abatement programs. And my belief is that these revenues would grow in the future. If you're a commercial property owner, if you're an industrial property owner, what that might mean for you is if you've got a property that's worth $1 million, your property tax bill annually could go up anywhere from $1,000 to $1,400 a year. So it's not free. There's a cost associated with it, but we've seen this be successful in other places throughout the region. Next slide. Okay.
Right. Go ahead.
Do you want me? I was going to say there's a couple questions here on the side, and I can address these if you guys think that's a good idea.
Sure.
Great. So I think we've got two from Ramonia. Highlands division between two precincts. How can a management district be effective? The management district would only work with the county and state, not sure with what city. So what's interesting is that this district is going to be its own entity. So that entity is going to be able to work with a variety of political subdivisions. So that could mean it would theoretically work with both precincts. It would work with the county as a whole. It could work with adjacent municipalities like, Baytown or City of Houston or whoever to accomplish its mission. We have a lot of districts in the state that have other jurisdictional boundaries that overlap in a variety of different ways. You've got some that span, different county lines, actually. You've got management districts that span between Harris County and Fort Bend County. You've got management districts that are partially within and outside of the city of Houston. You've got others that have different TERs that overlap them. So it's not really it will not negatively impact the district or a theoretical district, right? To have two different precincts overlap. In fact, I would say maybe that's a great thing because then that district can work with both commissioners, both precincts, and try to leverage funding and advocacy and everything else for the projects in this plan. That's frankly how I look at it. The second question is there an expectation the management district will be taking ownership of some of these recommendations over time if formed? If this community plan is addressing many of the ideas discussed, which is what a management district does in the case of Highlands Lynchburg, what would be the projects to consider in the future? Yeah, so that would definitely be a potential option moving forward. There's a lot in this plan, and there is more than probably any one precinct can reasonably say, we're just going to knock all this out. And, maybe over 20 years, potentially. But the creation of a management district and this additional entity could very realistically take on some of these recommendations and could implement these recommendations over time. So that would allow some of these projects that are capital projects, for example, to sort of get checked off the list or crossed off the list. It would allow a district to come in and say, look, we're going to provide supplemental safety and security service and cross that off the list. And then it would also enable a forum or an entity to identify new projects moving forward. Kind of go to the last part of your question there. What would be the projects to consider in the future? Who knows? It depends what the needs are going to be in 10 and 20 years. And at least then you're going to have that, you could theoretically have that management district in place that can be constantly scanning for new needs, finding grant opportunities, doing the planning, design, whatever, to address those needs moving forward. And that's what we've seen. Again, if you kind of go to those examples is, the needs in those communities change over time. In day one, it's get rid of blight. In day 10,000, it's, well, we need a world-class park in this community, right? So it's just different needs. Your needs will evolve.
Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
We have another question.
It's a little bit of a comment. Would be interested to hear what local business think about a management district. Has anyone approached any of the businesses? So no, we have not done any direct outreach to local businesses, but if we have any business owners on the call tonight who'd like to contribute to the conversation, we'd be happy to hear the feedback.
Yes, and
Yeah,
some of
and
the, go ahead.
Sorry, I can chime in a little bit. I think Jim said it well in terms of, you know, the management district leveraging and partnering with other entities. I do want to mention here at Precinct 2, we have a yearly call for partnership projects, and we have partnered with management districts for 2 years now, and hopefully for a third year coming up. And so those funds that the district has are able to be multiplied with precinct funds. And, you know, the vision that the community has from a management district that is more local, that is, you know, led by a board of peers of the community, is able to guide that direction for the community, and the precinct is there to support that, right? And so that could be a very beneficial entity for the community. The challenge too is going to be, you know, one, the span of this plan, right? Like today we're gonna, you know, have these conversations, and if that's something that the community thinks, you guys think that we should keep as a recommendation, then the next step is really, you know, who is going to be the champion to take this to the legislature, right? And so that would be a whole nother challenge. So if this is something that you guys don't think is appropriate for this community, and there are some serious concerns, that's fine. It's just trade off in the number in type of recommendations that we can do today. So with that, maybe we can address the next question.
It's just a comment from Angela. It says all burdens on local business will be passed on to the local consumers. It's the nature of economy.
Sure. I think there's a case to be made for not adding a burden to local businesses, right? And then on the other hand, there's a case to be made for, you know, we're actually using this funding to improve the community so that there's an economic development incentive, and there's more businesses that come to the area, and more business that can be made. So yes, I mean, definitely, I can see that in both ways.
All right, and Randy added a comment. We need to organize some public education about the management district, and it needs to be a peer-to-peer conversation, not guided by the county.
No, that's great feedback. I think that's really useful to know for us, you know, where the direction the community wants to go. This is something that this was actually one of the main items that why we decided to do 2 task force meetings. We initially had the first task force meeting where we presented recommendations, and there were quite a bit of comments on the management district, right? And so we did circle back around last month with the task force again to try to elaborate on this idea and communicate, you know, the pros and cons of it, and again, you know, this is up for the community to decide if it's something appropriate for you guys.
Yes, so maybe Randy, we could talk offline about maybe scheduling a time to come into one of the chambers meetings or something of that sort, and talk about this management district, or maybe guide a conversation, or if you guys have a conversation and you need input from us, you know, let us know. We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the information, and then you can make, if you have the information, you'll be able to make some more judgments and decisions based on that. So I also do want to mention that we have a follow-up comments and questions avenue through the website portal, and that's the highlandslynchburgplan.com. And you can go and you can put any comments or questions that'll go directly to us. And we can set up any sort of call or a meeting or anything to discuss these further if anybody has any comments or questions, or we can answer it through an email. So that's one of the main ways you can follow up with any questions or comments. And then also you can email us, Mary or myself, our emails are here, or you can email or call Jorge or Gretchen, and their information is there as well. I think we have a few other comments, questions.
We have a comment from Jim. Generally concerned about greater stresses on local businesses, would like to get more county attention on our community, traffic and police presence.
Sure, thank you, Jim.
That's it. All right, so we have about oh, Sarah raised her hand. Would you like to unmute?
Do I need to do that? Sorry, I accidentally just muted you again. So sorry. Could you unmute again?
There we go.
Sorry about that.
Okay. I understand the concern about additional burden perhaps on the local businesses. Yet on the other hand, if you're thinking about the whole full picture, I would think it's to their advantage to have this district management and have to, be assessed a little bit more, because it would help their safety, the trash, the outlook, and the improved environment for even more businesses to come, which would keep their assessment perhaps down. I don't know. In my mind, I can see it being an advantage for the local businesses. Not a, what do you call it? A burden.
Thank you for the comment, Sarah. I really appreciate your willingness to speak up.
Thank you, Sarah. I do believe that has been our experience so far with districts. I think Jim mentioned he's had a number of years of experience with different districts and has seen them grow and evolve over time and provide those services for the business owners, right? And yes, there's definitely like that added burden financially, but we've seen a number of benefits come out of the management district in terms of safety, in terms of projects, in terms of making the community better, and thus improving that business that way. But again, we're open to everyone's comments and suggestions. So thank you for that.
So we have another one comment. It says in the recommendations, what is slotted for nonprofits, social services? We spoke about cultural assets and social services. So I think I'm just looking for a little bit more information on that.
So some of the nonprofits and social services that we discussed would be the two we mentioned, three, Baker Ripley, Workforce Solutions, and Lee College. Partnering with them to bring some workforce development programs and to the area, and that could be in the form of the of any of the services that Workforce Solutions offers, and that could be virtually or in person. And some of the other social services, there are programs as part of the Harris County Corrections and Community Supervision Department and Division, and they have classes and they have programs that we would want to partner with them and bring those to this area, and not just the greater Harris County, but specifically to this area as well. So those were a few that we vetted during our recommendations phase. But we're also open to any suggestions on anybody we should look into or any other connections that we could make.
Yes. And so there's a question about the presentation, and yes, it will be available on the website that you see listed there, as are all of the previous ones as well. So you can have access to it, share it with your other community members, and please send us any feedback that you may have. And then we just have one final comment from Angela saying that recommending that people research the Near Northwest Management District before assuming it'll be a benefit to the community. So that is just one more example within our region. So with that, we have hit our 7:30 time frame. So if there's any last questions, we can try to fit them in right now, but we don't want to take up too much of anyone's time.
So Amanda, Mary, maybe before we close, I'm wondering, what about some next steps? I know there was a suggestion of potentially meeting with the chamber, or doing a little bit more of an individual conversation. If people are interested to follow up on the management district idea. I've heard some both positive and negative comments on that idea, and I think I want to have a little bit of an opening for the community to say if they're interested in setting up a follow-up meeting. I think we'd be happy to circle back around. I mean, I'm definitely happy to swing by and say hello and chat for a little bit. Would you guys be interested in that?
Yeah, I will go ahead and get with Randy. Let's chat. I'll send you a message tomorrow morning, Randy, since he's representing the chambers on both this meeting and our task force. And we'll figure out the best time to do that and make sure that we get the word out on that.
Great. Yeah, yeah, Randy, we're happy to swing by. Anyone else, if you would like to get together with us and talk a little bit more about this, we'll do some more engagement and make sure we're on the right track.
Great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time and joining us tonight. And we will be sure to post this on the website as soon as possible, and look forward to the rest of the next steps in this plan with you all.
Great. And thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Angela. We have been working very hard on this, and so we're glad you enjoyed the presentation. And again, we want to make sure that this is something that you guys support, and so we'll be following up.
Yes, and please feel free, anyone on this, to give me a call or shout out tomorrow via email. I'll be happy to take down any additional information and pass it on.
Thanks, everyone.
Sounds good. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.